Is it bad for me to say this? I'm going to say this anyway, since it's the first time I've ever done something like this. But welcome to the Raging Roll stream. What I want you to do is hit that like and subscribe button. Do all the bell things. You know what it is. You know the drill. Please follow our content because we want to get it out there. And if you love this kind of stuff, then great. Hi everyone. We're going to recap everything that happened within Phase 1 of Rime the Frostmaiden. I am Jeremy Roberts, the DM of Rime the Frostmaiden for Raging Rolls, and we're going to cover everything the adventurers have taken part in from the beginning of the adventure in Bremen on the 13th of the Fading through to the current day in game, the 25th of the Fading. That's right, folks, 13 total game days. It's taken us 25 sessions of real human time. So let's dive right in. First, the characters. 6 adventurers take part in this campaign through the Icewind Dale. We have Beatrice Roche, a high elf wizard, starting out with Bosforamus Rome, a human fighter, along with Greykov, wood elf rogue, Jorgen, a tabaxi barbarian, Tolben Whitescale, human druid, and Zane Thorpe, human paladin. Now, I had a couple of changes through the characters throughout this first phase, which will see how this pans out. Our characters began the adventure in Bremen, a small town on the southwest coast of the Mare de Weldon, a small lake up north in Icewind Dale, in 10 towns. Day 1 of the campaign in Bremen, and the characters all find their way meeting each other and are basically given the quest to go and tackle more or less a Loch Ness monster that's plaguing the people of Bremen and floating around in Mare de Weldon. With a bit of coaxing, they managed to get in there and actually not fight this creature, but talk to it. One of our now beloved NPCs, Nethy the Loch Ness Monster, basically, one of my first voices I pulled off, and it still seems to stick around for them. Now they've got a more or less a telephone where they can call Nessie whenever they want. Nessie, their name they've dubbed this creature. Nessie was under the influence of at the time an unknown entity who had awakened this creature and had asked this creature, this monster, this plesiosaur, to cause all sorts of unrest for the fishes of 10 towns, especially those focusing on Bremen. Our adventurers managed to persuade this creature that maybe that's not such a good idea, and maybe just make it look like the monster's causing damage, but don't actually cause any damage, because persuasion checks. After sorting out the issue with the plesiosaur of Mare de Weldon, the party all decided to, get to know the town a bit more and ask the speaker of the town, although more or less the person who's running the town, why he let the place get the way it is. They discovered the speaker, who was pretty much not in his right mind, in the local tavern, mumbling, rambling to himself. They became very suspicious of this speaker, not wanting him to die, basically. But what happened? Well, the speaker decided to walk out of that house, out of that tavern. He'd been known to often take himself out onto the ice of the Mare de Weldon, which he did this night. The party following behind him, trying to coax him, trying to talk to him, figure out what the hell he was doing, only for him to fall through the ice into the freezing water. Little guy wasn't really going to survive that very well. They managed to pluck him out. A couple of them got a bit cold in that water, and they got him out there, and they ended up taking him back to his house. Unfortunately, it wasn't going to be enough. After falling into the ice, into the frozen water, freezing cold water, even bringing the guy home to his house, it wasn't going to be enough. The exposure to the elements just crippled him to the point where he just quit life. There was a bit of an encounter thereafter with some ice memphits, and the party decided, you know what, we're going to just get the hell out of here. I think they all went their different ways. A couple of them stayed in the local inn. Some of the locals to Bremen, being Bosforamus and Tolben Whitescale, went back to their respective houses. And it was about then when all hell broke loose, when all the shit hit the fan, when everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. Unbeknownst to everyone else in the party, Bosforamus, on his lonely walk back to his home, encountered a bit of a creepy dude or creepy person within the town of Bremen, who ended up luring him into a hidden little alleyway, doing some funky cool magic and causing all sorts of icicles and spikes to just jam themselves directly into this dude's body. Basically just turning him into an inside-out porcupine, and then leaving a little present of a jade-coloured handkerchief inside Bosphoramis's mouth. Just a little present for the rest of the group to find in the morning. Upon discovering this murder the next day, as the party sort of find their way out in the town again, we discover that now we have a different character joining the group. Impa Rome, Boz's wife. Impa, being a Goliath cleric, joins the fray kind of with the mission to try and solve or figure out who killed Boz and get justice for that person. So the party begin to follow some trails, follow some clues out towards the outskirts of Bremen, trails of like this blueberry coloured stuff or a bit of drops of blood throughout the snow until the trail goes dry as they sort of head towards Targos. They spent one extra night in Bremen just to recover things, just to make sure they could set Boz's and Impa's kids at ease before heading across to Targos. Oh, I forgot to mention, while they were trying to sort out this issue with the plesiosaur, they encountered Tali. Tali was a bit of a scholar, and she just wanted to understand more about the flora and fauna of Icewind Dale, and she was very set on finding other creatures that could speak, such as the plesiosaur Nessie. And she had heard rumour of a awakened moose that causing all sorts of havoc up in Lonelywood. But to get to Lonelywood, of course, the party had to do some travelling around through different towns. The next town on that path was Targos. If the players thought things were bad once they were in Bremen and they saw or found Bosphoramis's murdered, there was nothing compared to what was in store for them in Targos. Getting to Targos, they had a bit of a look around. Whilst they were looking around, they discovered an old burnt-out house. On this broken-down door was a strange symbol, circular in nature, with some pointy bits on it. I'll put it up here in a second. Which, when they tried to cross that threshold and have an explore, Zane suffered incredibly frustrating, like scary, traumatic visions and nightmares, and a few other of them did as well. And they ended up coming back to this house a little bit later on in their adventure here, and were pretty shaken up at everything they saw. This symbol sort of bringing up memories and things to do with Zane's past. He's seen this in the past in the same condition in his own house. Following that, and afterwards, they decided to go and find the town speaker, a bloke called Nath Maxildanar, hell of a name, who recognised on Impa's clothing the symbol of the Harpers. Now, Maxildanar was himself a Zentarum, so these two did not get along off the outset. Maxildanar wanted to try and get rid of any kind of Harper threat and sort of spread his occupation in 10 towns beyond Targos into other towns. Speaker Maxildanar and his right-hand man arranged a meeting to meet up with the players and arrange to talk about diplomacy and how they could share occupation and start to put order back into Bremen. Of course, it was a ruse. The players tried to go there anyway, wanting to meet him and try and get rid of him whatever way they could, but they were led directly into a trap. The house they were led into was shooting arrows at them. It started to catch on fire, and one of them, Firehands herself, Beatrice Roche, creates a little bonfire in a small little wooden house. What's going to happen? The whole house goes up in flames. They decide to eventually get out of there, obviously with hardly any weapons on them because they were taken off them by Speaker's right-hand man, and get out of there. They eventually decided to get into Maxildanar's lodgings and have a bit of a look around. They found a few things, got out of there, and were very quickly apprehended as the whole vicinity of where that one sort of trap house was going up in flames. No one could put this fire out fast enough. The whole thing was burning. Captured and led away from that scene and being taken into custody by the town guard. They were about to enter another place where they were going to be held captive when, lo and behold, Firehands herself sets the place on fire again and more hell breaks loose. Another fight ensues. It was at this point, around this point, we encountered Greykov's past, with him being branded with an X on his neck, and finding at this point 2 other people from his old group, the road race, being Angelina Poppers and Heavy Hands Turlac. I had to think about that for a second. I think they actually discovered Angelina Pops and Heavy Hands previously in a tavern they have all sort of milling it out in. In any case, it was at this point when, running away from things, Greykov himself shied an arrow of hope over the top of a house and took down the damaged Heavy Hands. Wiped him out. They fled the scene, fled the burning place where they're going to be taken into, the Zentarum hideout potentially, fled Pops, the dead body of Heavy Hands, and were taken in by a little helping halfling called Leaf. Leaf gave them a bit more info about what was going on in the town, what was really happening behind the scenes, to the point where the party thought, you know what, we've got to sort out this speaker, he's bad news. Eventually started to find a way back into this hideout where he was hiding, try and flush him out and sort him out once and for all. They got in the underground and found a hidden sort of chamber where prisoners were kept, as well as other creatures that the Zentarum had found around the place for sport. They wiped out a few goblins, basically terrified them of trying to do anything to them, and sent the goblins packing. They found themselves in a small chamber with 6 prison cells, each with a creepy monster in them, and the town speaker himself, who had pretty much a dead man switch. Should he get killed and drop that switch, every one of those cages was going to open, and every one of those monsters was going to attack the party. However, was that going to happen? Of course not. Our Goliath friend, after a bit of persuasion, jumped across the table at the speaker, grabbed his hand and this dead man switch before he was able to drop it or do anything about it, and essentially tied him to it. Tied him to a chair, convinced him with ropes and straps, tied him to a chair in the center of where all these cages were, and then just slit that poor speaker's arm from wrist to elbow. And then the party, which was amazing, I loved it, just up and left. They left that room, they got out of Targos, and they got the hell out of there. On their way northward towards Tourmaline, it was about this time when Impa Rome decided, you know what, there's been too many close calls. She's got her kids at home, 2 kids, and the adventuring life wasn't for her. So she left to go back to Bremen and look after her family. On their way northward towards Tourmaline, the party encountered a tiefling cleric called Sly, who joined the party. Onward to Tourmaline. The party get there, they find a small inn they can hang out at, and then next morning they're working to cries from the town crier saying the gem mine has been shut once again because of kobolds, and they need adventurers to get in there and solve it. Better go speak to the town speaker, which they do. They're given the quest to go and clear out the Tourmaline gem mine. They head off in that direction. They dig through the mine. They find a bunch of kobolds. They find a couple of other creatures that I can't remember the name of right now. And they take care of everything. Dispose of everything. One of the kobolds in there was actually a ghost, or a possessed kobold. So they disposed of all that threat. They took some of the parts of the kobolds back towards the inn in Tourmaline. 2 kobolds managed to escape. They get back into Tourmaline, hang around there, waiting in the inn for the next day to go and see the speaker. They have a chat to him, and then hanging around. It was overnight at that point when they spotted and were interrupted by a couple of people who, again, were from Greykov's past, ready to chase him down. The party get their shit together, get out the doors at the back of the inn, and start to take flight away from this group of assassins. This, after a series of terrible checks to try and run through snow and not trip over things, they couldn't. They tripped over every tree root, every rock, everything, slowing them down and letting their pursuers catch them. A fight broke out. And at this point, we have Beatrice went down. Beatrice came up. Other dudes went down. It was a close call, an amazing fight, and the party disposed of all them. They return to Tourmaline, sort their shit out there, and then make their way finally towards Lonelywood. So they've reached Lonelywood at like 2 in the morning. They see one small little character walking around in the town who seems to be a little bit wobbly. Turns out someone who's a little bit pissed, just leaving their friend's house, but invites them back to their own house. This person is a tattooist. And now Beatrice has a tattoo of something somewhere which she won't tell the others. They they were given the address of an abandoned inn, which they snuck into and sort of decided to stay there for the night. But they were drawn downstairs in their explorations and discovered a puzzle of mirrors and things where they had to try and sort out what was in the reflection before they could get what was in their actual reflection to get a charlatan's eye. Cool little trinket they could use to their advantage in the future. So the next morning they're driven to go and sort out this moose, this awakened moose once and for all. This moose that's been terrorizing the loggers and people in the town, killing people on the whim. And this is Tarly's who's still following them around. And also Pops is following them around now too, because she needed to find some safety from this other group that was trying to chase Greykov down. It gets complicated. You should go and watch it. Anywho, Tarly's quite keen to go and sort out and have a look at this awakened moose, find out and learn about it a bit more. So off the party goes. On their way to town looking for this moose, they discover this shattered shrine that was made out to Malachi, but had been recreated to be fashioned for a shrine to Oral the Frostmaiden. And kneeling before it in a completely frozen state was another halfling, who, it turns out, was the brother of the tattooist. Unfortunately, they were unable to try and do anything about this frozen guy. He's frozen by something bigger than just basic cold. Moving on, they decided to leave him there for now and try and sort him out later. But moving on to try and find this moose, they found all sorts of other trouble. They found banshees and other rabbits and other things that were distractions and a ton of regular mooses, but they had trouble finding the actual awakened white moose that was murdering people. The next day, after spending a night in the cold in the forest, they did discover the moose. They followed its tracks and stumbled upon an old elven tomb. In sticking their heads where they probably weren't supposed to, they discovered a small sanctuary where this awakened moose and a few other creatures were hiding. Of course, the moose, being as angry and aggro as it is, tries to attack them straight away. A fight breaks out. Beatrice, who's now carrying around a bracelet of ducks, fires ducks at this now weakened moose after a bit of other damage, and these ducks start tearing this moose to shreds. Investigating more of this area, this tomb, they find a couple of sealed doors, which they eventually figure out how to unlock by pointing moonbeams in certain directions, and then encounter the Frost Druid Ravison, who, as it turns out, was a bit of a bitch, cold-hearted, was fuming that the town had killed her twin sister, who turned out it was Tarly who accidentally killed her by chopping her foot off in a bear trap. But Tarly's a bit upset about that as well. Ravison gives fight. Characters who are now have called themselves the Fist of Bremen give fight back and rip this woman apart. They, I don't think, meant to kill her in the end. I think they were going to question her, but, Greykov fired the killing arrow, and now she's dead. Of course, whenever anyone dies in this game, there's loot, right? And things to explore and things to try and rifle through and find out what these people have. So this Ravison Frost Druid is no different. I should point out also Ravison was the one that killed Bosphorus in Session 2, so that was a good kind of tie-in. Right, so they discovered in her possession this notebook, and once they opened it, and not everyone has seen this notebook, Beatrice opened it, discovered all sorts of history. It was a journal of someone that she used to know, of someone that Tolbin was married to, of someone that Zane was married to. This one person describes a journey they've been on and through, and is now somewhere in Icewind Dale with Oral the Frostmaiden, using Oral as a tutor to try and see how powerful she can get. Once the party eventually leaves this small chamber where they discovered this journal, they encounter this vision of the different forms that this one person has taken to each of these 3 different characters that she's been connected to, followed by a vision and the speech of Oral the Frostmaiden herself, kind of threatening to get the hell out of this area. Leave us the hell alone, or feel her wrath. It's at that point that all the frost and fog that was around the characters at this time dissipates, and burning ashen leaves float to the ground. And that's where we finished Phase 1. Of course, I can't do the whole campaign, these 25 sessions we've had, complete justice in this 20 or 30 minute video, whatever it's going to be in the end. But it's been an amazing time. I've seen so much character progression. I'm looking at so many character tie-ins to the whole campaign that are just naturally evolving and creating themselves, and there's still so much more to explore. This is Phase 1. This is Part 1. Our characters have just reached Level 4, folks. That's Level 4. We still have the wider Icewind Dale regions to explore and somehow track down and sort out all of the Frostmaiden and potentially someone else she might be working with, and potentially a whole bunch of other shit going on which the characters are just about to start finding out about. So stick around, stay tuned, find us on twitch.tv/ragingrolls on Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. local Sydney time. You can also find us on YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram, you name it, we are there. And also Discord. Come and find us. We like to chat, we like to hang out. Hope you're having a good time. I'm having a good time running this game. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot to it. See you around.